Hello and welcome into Off the Bench here on a Tuesday, December 30th, second last show of the year. We will be back tomorrow morning for New Year's Eve. And speaking of that, we have a fun show for you today. We're going to do some New Year's resolutions for local teams. One resolution for every major team. Spoiler, you're going to want to stick around for the FCC one because we put a lot of thought into that. We're going to talk a little bit about the Chase Brown extension rumors, which just kind of swirled up, and I don't think it's swirled up because there's actual talks. It's just like, oh, we could do this year. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll play a little buy or sell later on. Later on this week, we will try to get some guests on to talk about where the Reds currently are at. Xavier has a big game against a national championship contender tomorrow against UConn, so we'll talk a little Xavier tomorrow. I'll be at Cintas Center for that one, but I'm Reed Mouse, joined along here, as always, with my main man, Stone Shields. Stone, how are you on this lovely Tuesday morning?
Doing great. Happy to be here. Got a couple more shows left in 2025. Hard to believe, man. Hard to believe it's almost that time of year to be switching the calendar over once again. As I get past college, these years go by really, really fast.
You know what? It's funny you mentioned that because, yes, as you get older, the years, because you've lived so much life, so they're taking lesser and lesser a portion of your brain capacity. So like weeks feel shorter, months feel shorter, and everything like that. I think often about, and I know there's a couple people in our chat that either have been teachers or know people that have been teachers. I wonder, because when we were in school, our year, how we thought of time was year to year. Like I've got first semester, second semester. I'm now a freshman in high school. Now I'm a senior in high school. I'm in seventh grade, whatever it is. That's how we gauge time. And I wonder if my friends that are teachers or, people in our life that are teachers, if they still think about time in that same capacity of like, oh, there's the fall, then there's the spring, and then, oh, I'm summer, I'm free. And I wonder if they still are in that same mold where, so removed. I don't know if you still think that way, but I'm so far removed from college. It's been 7 years since I was in school. And, I no longer think of like, oh, we got to get to May or we got to get to June. We got to get to the summer. And then the year starts all over again in the fall. Do you still think that way?
It's funny. I was thinking the same thing you just said because my mom is a teacher and she still obviously thinks that way. But now for me, I'm all jumbled and all over the place. And I'd see, buddies of little brothers and they're on J-term at Miami right now. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even really process that was going on right now. So, yeah, I think part of the reason it goes so fast is my calendar is all over the place because
Sure.
I don't really have that, structure of, okay, we're going to be on break here and then we're going to go back to school and then it's the next year. So, yeah, it's a little bit different now.
It's Everett. I know Everett used to be a teacher. Said you're in constant countdown mode as a teacher. And yeah, that's like when you're in school, when you're a teacher, I assume you're just counting like, hey, can we get to the next break? Okay, now can we get to the end of this? And oh, now I've got 20 years left till I can retire. The mode in which I kind of think is similar in checkpoint mode, but it's like, when do I, not like when is an easier time for work? When am I going on vacation again? Where now I'm in countdown mode for my lovely daughter, which I actually did a 4D, did one of those 4D ultrasounds yesterday. That was kind of neat to see her facial features and everything like that. That was kind of neat to do yesterday. But it's funny how we still are working in the countdown mode. All right, we're done bull junking along. Let's break into the show here on a Tuesday. Off the bench, Reed Mouse. Thank you guys, everyone, for being here. Let's have a great show. So Chase Brown had been brought up, then this is coming off the heels of his two best games of the season. I don't think that's a stretch to say that. Obviously, dominating games against bad teams that they should have won, they easily did win. And we kind of see what this offense looks like, not just with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and a lot of them, but we also understand that Chase Brown has been a big portion of this team. If he has 150 yards, which is a big reach, if he has 150 yards against this Browns team all-purpose this Sunday, he will stretch into top 10 all-time single-season all-purpose yards. That's a very tall accomplishment, especially in this team that, as long as I've been a fan, they've had really good running backs. They've had really good wide receivers. They have really talented offensive players. Not just the quarterbacks where we went from Carson Palmer to Andy Dalton and now to Joe Burrow, but from wide receiver. We had Chad Johnson and TJ Hushmanzada to AJ Green to now Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And you can do the same thing for running back, Corey Dillon, to Rudy Johnson, to Cedric Benson, all the way to Jeremy Hill and Joe Mixon, and now it's Chase Brown. So the question is, as he will be on his final year of his rookie deal next year, do the Bengals start looking at extending Chase Brown? So you got to remember a few things before we dive into this. One, yes, he'll be on his final year. You have him for one more year. Two, throughout the history of this Cincinnati Bengals team, just listen to the names I just mentioned, it's not been too hard to find productive play at running back. And that's just not the Bengals. That's pretty much across the board. There's never been, never, ever, ever have you looked at a team in the NFL and you gone, that team's a running back away from being very special. Now, we saw it last year with the Philadelphia Eagles, and they get Saquon Barkley, which, of course, is a generational player. And, yeah, we saw it a few years ago with the 49ers and Christian McCaffrey, but those teams were already really great. You weren't looking at them going, if they get a better running back, that team's going to win the Super Bowl. No, you never really think of that. It happened last year with the Eagles, but I think we know that in this sport, unfortunately, and this is why they don't get paid the same amount of money as edge rushers and wide receivers and quarterbacks, is, you can draft a guy like Chase Brown in the 4th round and it works out again. But a third thing is I think Chase Brown fits into this offense very, very well. Yes, he can run quite a bit. You could ask him to be a bell cow. You can go, hey, run 25 times a game, and he'll get you 100 yards. We've seen that before. We saw that when he was in college at Illinois. He led the Big Ten in rushing yards and rushing attempts at Illinois. That's big boy football. Also, he can catch it out of the backfield. That was something that, Joe Mixon was great. He wasn't necessarily to the level that Chase Brown is. So we get to this point of, all right, what do we do? Where are we at with Chase Brown? Do we want to extend him? And I think we're all on board. It'd be really awesome if Chase Brown comes around or is a part of this offense for years to come. I don't think there's a single Bengals fan that'll say, I don't want Chase Brown around. But there's also a lot of Bengals fans that go like, the price has to be right. And when we brought the caveat and talked about this topic very briefly yesterday, I think me and Stone were both in agreement of saying, yeah, we get rid of him, sure. I'm confident that they'll find a replacement level player, find someone that can make this offense still churn out pretty high. But also, if you extend him, sure, I'm on board for that too. So the question is what's the price point? Where is the point of where we go, I'm cool with that deal, I'm not cool with that deal anymore? I think we all agree, and this isn't going to be the case. We give Chase Brown $20 million a year, I'm out. We give him 3 years, $60 million, I'm out. We give him 3 years, $30 million, I'm in. I'm right there. So the question point blank is, where are we comfortable with a Chase Brown extension? And you can look around. Derrick Henry signed a 2-year, $30 million deal last year in Baltimore. He's much older. James Cook with Buffalo signed a 4-year, $48 million. That's averaging out $12 million a year. You can look at Kyron Williams, 3 years, $35 million for the Rams. So where are we comfortable? Jonathan Taylor, 3 years, $42 million. Those are all players that I've named. I think we can all agree. James Cook, Kyron Williams, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick, and those are better running backs than Chase Brown. So maybe that high of a number, we can bring it on down. So I don't want to bog it down to just talking what's the exact number, where are we going to be that we're comfortable, because I think contract talk is often boring. But Stone, I know we brought it up yesterday briefly. I'll give you a chance to kind of fledge this out because, in our pre-show meeting, you kind of even pushed back that maybe I'm undervaluing Chase Brown just a tidbit. Where are you at in the Chase Brown extend him or not conversation?
Yeah, I think for the most part, you and I are pretty aligned here. There's no debating that Chase Brown, when he's out there with Joe Burrow, is an unbelievable football player that adds a totally different element to this offense when T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are out on the football field. And we said going into this year that I thought this would be kind of a name where Chase Brown really breaks out. I think you'd argue last year was his breakout year, but really had the potential to become kind of like a borderline household name around the NFL this year with a healthy Joe Burrow. Unfortunately, Joe Burrow was out for much of the year. And he started to come into his own a little bit after a slow start. The offensive line was kind of finding their way. But in the Flacco era, he started to put together some good games. And obviously he's playing his best football here at the end of the year with Joe Burrow. Look, you're paying a ton of guys on offense. Eventually you're going to have to pay Amarius Mims as one of your tackles. That's going to garner a pretty sizable deal. And, of course, you're paying your two top weapons and your quarterback and Joe Burrow. I just think from a numbers game perspective, it can get pretty difficult. And Chase Brown's going to want his money. He's going to sit here and say, look, this is my production. This is the kind of production other backs around the league are having, and this is how much they're getting paid. He's going to want to get his money. And I don't know if the Bengals, based on how their defense is currently structured and the stars that I mentioned that are already getting paid, are going to be able to have room for Chase Brown in their books. And, that saddens me a little bit. But I don't think he's the guy where it's like, you know what, he's a must-have, right? We talked about T. Higgins, Joe Burrow saying he's a must. T. Higgins is a must. I think everybody likes Chase Brown in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow certainly likes him. But when you look at their team and the makeup of their team, when you have guys that are done with their rookie deal, you can't keep everybody, especially when your defense is as bad as it is. So I'm with you. If the number is right and he's willing to take a bit of a discount to stay here, yeah, absolutely. But at that running back spot, you really only have one chance to go get your money, and this is it coming up here for Chase Brown. So we'll see if he just kind of plays out his rookie year or this rookie contract with the final year of his contract next year, goes on his merry way, or if he's going to hold out and try to want an extension at some point this offseason. I'm not quite sure, but I would love him to stick around. I just don't know if the numbers are going to match up.
Do you see if there's no extension, do you think it's likely that he will hold out? Do you think he will?
It's interesting. I don't know. I mean, we saw T. Higgins and Jamar Chase do it. I feel like it would be kind of like one of those situations where he's holding out, but he's not making a massive scene about it, and the Bengals just kind of laugh at him, and then he's like, well, I guess I got to show up to work, so maybe he'll miss a little bit of time, but I don't envision it getting ugly at all.
I think I agree. And also, this is as I brought up yesterday when talking about the defense and why I'm kind of excited looking into next year looking into this offseason about how they have an opportunity to kind of throw a lot of assets, whether it be draft picks, whether it be money at the defense. There is a much bigger portion of the pie available here coming into this offseason to where, you can kind of toy around with, all right, maybe we are comfortable giving Chase Brown X number of dollars. And like I said, he's a puzzle piece that fits very, very well into this offense. I mentioned it yesterday, and I don't think this is disparaging to Chase. I think he's a very good back, but like if Chase Brown plays for the Tennessee Titans, I don't think he's pretty clearly not putting out the exact same output. Like I think he does benefit from how good this offense is and how teams have to account for Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and how well we pass the ball to where, they can't stack the box and stuff like that. Like if he plays for the Arizona Cardinals, if he plays for some of these bad teams, are we still talking about Chase Brown in the way that we are? Pretty clearly that's not the case. So, yes, he fits this piece well. Yes, I think we can replace him very efficiently. Yes, I'm cool. So it's a very conflicting thing to where I think I'm going to be happy regardless of what the Bengals do this season, with the caveat, if we give him an extension to where we're going to be paying him $15 million, that's out. I don't think that's even close to being on the table, by the way. Like, I don't think that's close. That's what Derrick Henry gets. That's what James Cook's getting $12 million a year. To where as I'm looking around at these other deals, Josh Jacobs is getting $12 million a year. I think a deal where you look at some of these extensions that kind of make a little bit of sense is Chuba Hubbard for the Carolina Panthers signed a deal for 4 years, $33 million. If that's the case, sign me up. Probably a little bit more than that, certainly. To where if you pin me up against the wall, and he said, Reed, I want you to give me a number of where you're comfortable. To make it nice and round, about $10 million. If we give Chase Brown 3 years, $30 million, all on board, let's do it. Let's keep this offense churning out at the pace that we want. Because we know that if this offense is elite, if this offense keeps putting up the numbers that they do, and Joe Burrow stays healthy, and Jamar Chase and if we know that if all that stays the case, this team can beat anybody in the league. And no one wants to play us. It doesn't mean we're going to make the postseason, as we've seen the last 3 years, but we understand that when this whole thing is out there, 30 points is always on the table. In fact, you're going to have to look a little bit higher, as we've seen the last 2 days, last 2 weeks. 45 points against the Dolphins, 37 here against the Arizona Cardinals. So, yeah, if you push me up against a wall and you said, Reed Mouse, give me a number for Chase Brown, I think the number's about $10 million to where I'm comfortable. And I'm hand up, not the biggest contract guy. Not the biggest contract guy. Stone, does that number feel right? About $10 million AAV for Chase Brown?
Feels
I know
right.
You're not the biggest contract guy either.
Right. Yeah. Feels right. Again, but you look at his production, what he's done over the course of the past few years, and the value that he's brought to this team, he's going to want more than that, right? And is he going to want to stick around at that position? His time to get paid when somebody else would be willing to throw him more money, assuming he has another solid year next year. The availability also has been great. He's only missed a handful of times here. That's obviously very important at the running back spot. So I'm in alignment with you. We love Chase Brown. It would be great if he could stick around,
Right.
but just with how the salary cap works and the guys that you're paying and the holes on defense, I don't know if it will work. I think that position definitely will regress. I think running back in this offense to some degree is a little plug and play, but Chase Brown fits this offense really, really well, especially what he can do out of the backfield. But to your original point, 10 feels about right to me.
10 feels like the right number. I will warn everyone that if you don't hear a whole lot of Bengals news for a while and they finally get to the point of where it's time to extend contracts, they can have these contract talks, and the first thing that comes out of Bengals camp is that we have extended Chase Brown, we will be made fun of. We will be made fun of because the same thing that's like you guys run your team like it's Madden where you're just paying all the offensive guys. We will be made fun of, but I think we could all agree $10 million because they'll look at, oh, you're giving $55 million for Joe Burrow and you're giving this much money to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and now you're giving it to the running back. Why don't you fix that defense? And just warn you, that's going to happen, but it's going to be okay because I think they're going to throw a lot of money at this defense this year. I think they're going to throw a lot of assets at this defense. But I think $10 million for Chase Brown makes a lot of sense. We'll see what the market is or where we're at. And, if it gets into the 12 range, maybe we can have a little bit of a conversation. But anything above 12, I'm out. I'm out on it. If James Cook's getting 12, then that's not the market for Chase Brown. It's a little worse. We have a couple of super chats from Justin Edgel. $2 super chat. Watch the Bengals draft Jeremiah Love. You in on the Bengals drafting Jeremiah Love?
I'm not. Jeremiah Love's going to be a great player in the National Football League, but I am not into drafting Jeremiah Love. You're always hurt. You always hear around the league, oh, you shouldn't draft position. You got to draft the player. No, we're going to draft position, and it's going to be on defense.
That's right. I'm with you. I'm with you too. I think when it comes to April and we're doing a live watch along for the first round of the draft at the Bengals. It's Bengals pick is in. They've taken Jeremiah Love. I will be incredibly upset knowing that Jeremiah Love will put up incredible numbers here in Cincinnati. I'll be upset in that regard just because it is what it is. Another $5 super chat is Casey reloaded to Tony McAllister because dude is into dogs. I don't know who that is. I don't know. I wish I could tell you there, Justin. I don't know if that's some bit, if that's some story going on about Tony McAllister. I don't know if Casey's related to an Anthony, but thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. All right, let's talk about the New Year's resolutions. I know this is a thing that everyone does every single New Year. And it's a good way to gauge your year. I would advise you guys to. What I've done recently in New Year's resolutions is instead of giving I've got to do this, is I kind of have a theme to every year. I want to get more in shape, or I want to be more financially sound. It's not like I have to have this much money saved up. I want to lose this many pounds. But we'll do New Year's resolutions for every major team here in Cincinnati. That is Cincinnati Bengals. That is the Cincinnati Reds. That is the University of Cincinnati. That is Xavier University. And that is the Football Club Cincinnati, FCC. As I teased earlier on in the show, you're going to want to stick around for FCC because we thought long and hard. Thought really long and hard. We put our two brains together, me and Stone did, on how FCC could really improve into the year of our Lord, 2026. So without further ado, New Year's resolutions for every team here in town. And we'll start with the team that we always talk about on this show. We give the most credence to it this time of year, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals. What could they be doing in 2026 that can greatly improve their chances of winning, that can greatly improve their stock in the league, how we are reviewing them as fans, how we are reviewing them as media here in this town? And this one's pretty simple. It is something that has bogged down sports talk in this town for the last few months. And it is part of the formula of winning in the NFL. You get your coach, you get your quarterback, and what's the last one? You got to draft better. You're looking back at the 2024 draft, and you're looking at Shamar Stewart, who just got his first sack in his career. Congrats to Shamar. We didn't even mention that on the show. That's great. I think we are all pretty low on the stock of Shamar Stewart. Okay, what about the second-round pick, Demetrius? I think we're pretty low on Demetrius Knight. And what about Barrett Carter, who comes out in the fourth? I hate to do the chalk answer. I wish I could give you guys something better when it turns to New Year's resolutions for the Cincinnati Bengals. But point blank, we know that the bones are pretty much there for building a great team. We have Joe Burrow. We have Jamar Chase. We have an elite offense. Can they just draft better to fill in the gaps? Can they make this team just a better roster in the way that it makes this league so great, which is the ultimate equalizer, the NFL draft? Can they finally use that small scouting department and just hit on either a really late round guy, right? A 6th round pick that turns into a Pro Bowler? Or can we just get consistent starters at the top of the draft? Can we get a decent defense? So I'm sorry to take chalk here, but it's pretty simple. When you look at the Cincinnati Bengals and what they need to do in the new year is they need a draft. They need to be able to hit on this NFL draft this year, not just for this coming season, but for the years to come, so we can have sustained success. That's how you have sustained success in the National Football League, is drafting well. Stone, I know it's chalky. I know it's the easiest answer, but your thoughts on my New Year's resolution for the Bengals being draft better.
Mine's pretty chalky too. Mine is become a serious football operation. That's what I would like to see for the Cincinnati Bengals. Become a serious football operation. You said something on the show yesterday that was interesting, and I'm going to ask Jason Williams about this of the Inquirer in the 11 o'clock hour. You said last offseason was all about, well, we got to pay Jamar, pay T. Higgins, and then the defense kind of took a back seat. Do you think this organization and this operation was not capable of doing both things in the same offseason?
I think that's a really good question. Yeah, I think with just how mob and pop, how small the operation is, I think that is the case. And listen, I will never be in the war room of an NFL team. I will never understand how they go about scouting players. I will never understand how they go about contract negotiations. I never will. So all this stuff is just how I think it happens. But yeah, I think from how small the organization is, how small this team is, that they were unable to do two things at once. They were able to walk and chew gum. They were unable to devote serious time of how do we sign an impact player on this defensive line or sign an impact player in the safety. Like, how do we greatly enhance this team's defensive capabilities going into 2025 while also having to deal with the headache? And yes, that's exactly what Trey Hendrickson was in the offseason, and that's what he's been for the last few years. A great player when he's on the field, but he's been a headache when they're not actually playing out there. Well, yes, it's been a bit of a headache to where they probably had to change their plans on what they were doing with T. Higgins just based off the reception that they were getting in town and based off the reception that they were hearing from their starting quarterback, Joe Burrow. Yes, I think that this team was unable to do both of those things. I think it took up way too much time dealing with all of those contract negotiations to where they can also just not spend the 40 hours of the work week or however long. I'm sure they work more than that towards, hey, we got to scout these guys. We got to scout the guys that are in the league that we might be able to sign free agents. We got to scout these rookies that are going to be coming in and drafted. So to answer your question, yeah, I think it was too much for this small mom and pop organization, which I think was shocking for you to hear.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
That's why I asked, because you said it yesterday and I kind of laughed, and then I started thinking about it. I was like, I mean, you might be right here. Right? Like, why? Because we all knew how obvious it was that you needed to do stuff on defense, and you only got a handful of guys in there, and they're all worried about what the numbers are going to look like for T and Jamar. Like, literally, maybe they just couldn't do both. That's embarrassing to say that out loud, but you might be on some. But that's my New Year's resolution: become a serious football operation.
Yeah. So I was recently watching my my nephew. So this just shows you, like, sometimes you got to walk before you can run. I was watching my nephew's 5th grade basketball team, and the team they're playing's running all these crazy plays. The coach from the sidelines calling Indiana, Ohio State, whatever their play calls were, UCLA, and they're trying to run all these plays. And every time down the floor, the team they were playing just couldn't even dribble the basketball. And I was like, hey, man, seems like you're devoting a lot of time here, but you got to walk before you run. And that's how I feel about this Bengals front office is, sure, should they be capable of getting these extensions done and also making the team better in the draft and free agency? Yes, because that's what the Philadelphia Eagles do. That's what the Kansas City Chiefs do. That's what the Los Angeles Rams do. That's what the San Francisco 49ers do. That's what the Seattle Seahawks do. Yes, you should be able to do those things, but we know that here in town, sometimes you got to walk before you can run, and that's what excites me about this offseason is they really just have to worry about walking. They just got to do one thing. They just got to make that defense better. Yeah, you can say that what we opened the show with, Chase Brown contract negotiations, that could take up some time. But for the most case, all of they're doing in this offseason is how can we make this defense better? Because the offense is pretty much shored up. Few pieces you got to worry about. The contract with Chase Brown, a guard, a backup quarterback, a backup running back, everything else pretty much is ready to rock. Just turn it over next year and see what happens. So, yeah, we'll draft better, and you are a competent franchise. Be a competent franchise. Don't be so mom and pop. We'll go across the banks. The Cincinnati Reds, what could they be doing in 2026? And they are coming off their first playoff run in 12 years in a full season. They went to the wild card game. Didn't go well. They played a really good team, but didn't go well. And we're going into this 2026 season, and vibes are mixed going for this Reds team because they're making some head-scratching moves, and it seems like it's going to have an exciting move, and they're going to get Luis Robert, they're going to get Kyle Schwarber, and then those things kind of go by the wayside. So what is the New Year's resolution for the Cincinnati Reds? Well, what are we looking about this team that gets better? We're looking for a major bat to make that lineup better. But as we've known for years, especially with a small market team, if you want some ceiling, if you want something that is going to drastically alter the course of your franchise, it's got to come from internally. It's got to be from inside. Yes, you can look for pieces from the outside to kind of help here and there, but we know that you have to do it internally to have sustained success. So what's the New Year's resolution that can not only help the Reds in 2026, but for years to come? Can they develop better hitters? I don't have the list of every Reds prospect that they brought up, every top prospect that they've had over the last 15 years. But Elly De La Cruz is a phenomenal player. There's still some holes. He's a fantastic. Every single team, there's probably 5 no's in the league that you'd get if you'd said, I'd trade Elly De La Cruz for this player right now. That's how special he is. Outside of him, when was the last time the Reds developed a great hitter? Nick Senzel? No. The entire 2010s was pretty much filled with poor hitters. And then you get guys like Matt McClain, had a great 2023. Gets hurt. Wasn't good last year. You got Sal Stewart right now. Can he develop into a great hitter? CES was supposed to have, potential lineup-changing power. We haven't seen it yet. Will Benson had a great 2023. Takes a step back, and he's coming from the Guardians. So can the Reds develop good hitters? Because it seems mind-numbing that they can't, especially with that ballpark. They've got the second or most hitter-friendly ballpark in the country. 12-year-olds can hit home runs at it. Can they develop good hitting talent? Because the last time they did was a long time ago. You're talking Jay Bruce and Joey Votto and Todd Frazier. Since then, it's been few and far between where this team has been able to develop significant hitting power. So that's the Reds' New Year's resolution. Can they develop better hitters? They've done really well pitching. Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott, Hunter Green. Grant, they've done well pitching. Luis Castillo, Alexis Diaz, Raciel Iglesias before you traded him away. They've done well pitching. Why can't they make these great hitters? Am I missing any off the top of your head?
No.
About any Reds hitters that have come up in the last 15 years? The last one before Elly De La Cruz that I can think of is Todd Frazier.
Right.
I mean, there's Adam Duvall was okay here. Scotty Schebler's turned into Yeah, he's put a good major league career together, but yeah, we don't have a Jay Bruce, a Joey Votto here in town. We have Ellie De La Cruz, and I don't make this out to be that I'm discouraging Ellie De La Cruz, but Ellie De La Cruz is the only one I can think of in the last 15 years. So you think that's good news resolution for the Reds, and can you name any more?
No, I don't think I can name any more off the top of my head. Yeah, because that's what you're going to have to do when you're a small market team. You're not going to be able to bring in these guys that are surefire great players. You got to draft and develop, kind of what the Bengals are doing across the street or trying to do, right? And you haven't done that enough hitting-wise. To your point, they have from a pitching perspective. Iglesias was a bit of a bum when he was here, but that's a conversation for a different day. But, we need somebody like McClain, for example. Had a great rookie year and then gets hurt and then was non-existent last year. Need to see some development there. I know you would like to see more from Spencer Steer. Maybe you don't believe he is capable of doing more, but maybe with some good coaching, some good tutelage, he can perhaps morph into a better player. The one obvious one that you could say is add a bat, obviously, right? Add somebody that isn't a platoon guy and that can go out there and be a starter, a guy like Luis Robert, who we talked about a lot here. But I'll go in a different direction. We'll keep it on Ellie De La Cruz. And it's something we were talking about during our pre-show meeting, as you like to say.
Yeah, it's a long meeting.
Let him lead off. Why haven't we seen that? Right? Get Ellie De La Cruz as the leadoff hitter. You're seeing teams do this across Major League Baseball. Look at the Dodgers. Ohtani, he's their best player, right? He bats first, right? Why can't we see Ellie bat first, right? He struggled in these clutch, quote-unquote, clutch situations with guys on base. Get him up, get him early, get him on base, let him run around. I would like to see Ellie be the leadoff hitter, and let's get Friedel down a little bit in the lineup. Friedel's been a solid leadoff hitter for you, but it hasn't really moved the needle much. I think there's an opportunity for Ellie to really turn into the best version of himself if he is that leadoff guy. So I'm going to take a different approach there. I want Ellie De La Cruz to be the leadoff hitter for this team. That's my New Year's resolution.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny when it comes to Ellie batting leadoff because I think it was on this show. It was dialed in with Tom. Tom was interviewing Terry Francona, and Terry said Ellie's going to bat 3-hole, which was shocking at the time because it's like, why is he batting 3-hole? It doesn't make any sense for his talents. It doesn't make any sense to have Ellie De La Cruz batting 3-hole at all. He's got to be batting one or two. Has to be. So they've got to change that. That's a good one. And I was just looking at former Reds top prospects. Obviously, I mentioned current guys like Sal Stewart. One guy that has turned into a pretty good hitting catcher is Tyler Stevenson. Like, the problem is they haven't developed all-star level hitting talent. Like, you can look at Tyler Stevenson. You can look at a guy like Noelvi Marte's appearing to be a pretty good player. But, like, when it's been a long time since they've developed all-star talent. Jonathan India had that 1 year where he won Rookie of the Year. Nick Senzel was their top prospect. Jesse Winker was a good player. But it's just too far and too little and too far in between that this team at this ballpark has been unable to develop hitting talent. And I know that they put a big emphasis on developing pitching because that's what small markets do. And for a while there, that was kind of the bugaboo of the Reds. You're going all the way back 20 years ago to where they did have great hitters. They did have, Adam Dunn and Ken Griffey Jr. and Edwin Encarnacion and Sean. Like, they had a really good lineup. They just didn't have the pitching to match it. And they get in that 2010, 2012 run where everything kind of mended together and they got a lot of the pitchers from the outside. Matt Latos and guys like Edison Volquez and guys like that to supplement the Joey Vottos and the Jay Bruces of the world. And then Brandon Phillips was hot at that time. So, like, they just got to get back to exploiting the ballpark that they play 81 games in. Like, your greatest advantage as the Reds is that you have a very unique park that you play 81 home games in. Can you exploit it? The way that the Yankees exploit their short porch in right field. The way that the Astros exploit their short porch in left field. The way, like, there's ways that you can develop that. And the Reds just haven't. They just haven't for the last 15 years consistently made good hitters. And I read the chat. Why do we think that we give a rat's behind about Reed's Reds takes? And I get it. I know I troll, so I've earned that reputation. But I'm being honest here. That's the number one thing that the Reds need moving forward. That's the number one thing because they're churning out great pitchers. They're doing a really good job about that. But can they enhance their team internally with the sticks? And I don't think I'm stretching too far by saying that. All right, let's go into the college world. This is we'll start with the University of Cincinnati. We'll start with the Bear Kittens. This one is I'm projecting a little bit, or I'm, I guess, getting ahead of things a little bit. But their New Year's resolution has to be you got to hire better. I've on this show talked about Cunningham, the athletic director for UC. But since Fickle had gone, since Mick Cronin had gone, they've done a really poor job at hiring. Scott Satterfield had some success this year, falls off. Wes Miller, they were top 15 last year. They're spending $10 million in NIL on this roster. Things have to change, whether it be get a new head coach in here. Because reminder, Scott Satterfield was Louisville fans were wanting him out. And they've been churning out wins in Louisville ever since Scott Satterfield took this job. And we're in year 5 of Wes Miller, and it doesn't look like he's going to make the tournament this year. So do you push him out? And I think you should in both cases, and you've got to hire better. You can't go 5 years with Cincinnati basketball and not make the tournament. You just can't. You simply can't. And maybe they turn it around, you do some crazy stuff in the Big 12. I wouldn't bet on it. They had a good win against Lipscomb last night. Good for them. Yippee. But they've got to hire better because I think one of those jobs are going to be open. I guess Scott Satterfield's not going to be open because it already would be. But if that basketball job comes open, they have to hire a better job. They cannot do John Brandon or Wes Miller again. And Wes Miller was a win the press conference kind of guy. Everyone was excited about it. Every year he seems to have a great talent, but I just don't think he's got the coach in him. Hiring better for Cincinnati. I don't know if you have a different resolution, or because I'm also going to need them to fire someone, but they've got to hire better here in Cincinnati for the Bear Kittens.
How about this? I'm not a Cincinnati Bearcat like you are, but would you say between the two feels like a basketball school over a football school? Would you agree with that? Yes. I think
that's how we're regarded.
Okay. Mine, I think, is pick what are you and allocate more chips to what sport, whether it's football or basketball, because they're trying to do both here, and they're just kind of meh at both, right? I think you got to pick one and say, you know what, this is our identity as a university. This might be an unpopular take, but this is just kind of my opinion, especially in this conference, right? It's the Big 12. You're not in the American anymore. I don't know if you can, with the resources that you have, can you really be at the top of both? You could be average in both, but to really put this university back on the map, you got to be really good at one of the two. And it kind of feels like basketball would be that route, but Big 12 and basketball, a lot more difficult than the Big 12 and football. Ask you
about that.
So is it football, right? I mean, football is a more popular sport. You've been to the college football playoff with Luke Fickell a couple years ago. That was one of those 4 teams. Should be able to get back there with a 12-team format. But NIL, transfer portal, that wasn't really happening back then. So I think you got to pick one and then put more resources towards that sport and have some more success.
That's a really interesting conversation, which I don't think they're going to do.
Right.
Point blank. I think they're going because they both are money makers. They're both money makers. So which can you, if you had to go all in on one, what would it be? Because if you ask people across the country, what is UC? Is that a football school or is that a basketball school? And they've had much more football success over the last 15 years. They made one Sweet 16, I think, in the last 20 years in basketball. But people remember, the days of Bob Huggins in the 90s, Kenyon Martin, where they were, they were at the top of the game. And in the early days of the Big East, or not the early days, but when they were in the Big East in the mid-2000s and Mick Cronin, they were really, really good, where if you ask people across the country, this is a basketball school. But you brought it up, and this is the first thing I was thinking. If they were going to go all in to one or the other, where the current program is at, what is more conceivable? Them winning the Big 12 in basketball or them winning the Big 12 in football? And I really don't even think it's a conversation. It's pretty clearly football because the current state of Big 12 football is nowhere near the current state of Big 12. You're telling me that even if they go all in, they could compete with the Kansases and the Houstons? Yeah, they might be able to compete, but I think it's not even a conversation. If they were to go all in on one, where do you think? What is more conceivable? Them winning the Big 12 in football, or them winning it in basketball?
I hear you. Definitely football, but I think that changes a little bit if you put a new guy as the head basketball coach, right? And to your point, I just think, Wes has done some good things. He seems like a solid guy, but it's just he's had some time here, and it ain't happening. And there's a lot that talent. That roster's talented, as we've talked about. So I think maybe if you put a different coach in there that isn't from UNC Greensboro, wherever the heck he came from, more of an established coach, maybe that answer's a little bit different. But sitting right here with Wes Miller, obviously I would say football.
Yeah, it's I just look at, even if UC is really, really great in basketball, to where they are even at the same level as a BYU, and BYU is top 10 in the country right now. It's still just you're going to go to Kansas City and win the Big 12 championship, beating Kansas and Houston and Iowa State and BYU in a one game and out, and that's talking about the Big 12 championship, not the regular season title, which are two different things. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, no doubt about it. I think that if you ask UC fans, hey, if we're going to put all of our resources towards one thing, what would it be? They'd say basketball, because I think there's a little bit more of a connection there. There's a little bit of a richer history there. And if you ask people across the country, what is UC known for? They'd say basketball. But I think if you're looking at the current state of the conferences, football is much easier to win. Football is much easier to win. So that's an interesting thing. Pick a lane is Stone's New Year's resolution, but I think they've got to get rid of Wes. I think it's just not good. And I used to think that he was really good at the podium, but more often that he talks, you're just like, what are you saying, dude? Figure it out. Come on. All right. Well, we'll go across town, 3 miles north to Norwood, Xavier University. And I think in this current era, I've mentioned this before, that there is a chance to kind of exploit where we're at to where we're going to see new powers across the country. And Xavier's been a really, really good basketball program. And we know that in the first year of Richard Pitino, Sean Miller leaving, that there was going to be growing pains and that Xavier wasn't going to go all in. So I'll say this. If you're going to compete with the UConns, if you're going to compete with the St. John's, that obviously money flows through those, both of UConn's program and the fact that St. John's has Slick Rick Pitino, and they're in New York City, they've got a lot of money. So can Xavier, which is struggling as a school, can Xavier create a bigger NIL collective, which is at the top of their list? Once again, I'm going chalk across the board here, guys. Can Xavier create a bigger NIL collective to have them consistently competing in the Big East? I think they can, because they don't have to worry about football. They don't have to worry about these their number one priority, as is a lot of teams in the Big East. All of them. All of their money can go towards that basketball program. Can they create a bigger NIL collective is the New Year's resolution, and I think that's going to be growing. Buy some Muskie Lager. Stone, do you have one? Do you have a take on Xavier's?
Yeah, similar to what you said. I think the way I would phrase it is just buy into Pitino, right? Pitino can coach. We've seen that. It hasn't won every game, obviously, but it's very clear, especially watching the crosstown shootout, how big of a coaching mismatch that was. And I think if you're Xavier, the university, the basketball program, you have to understand that he's not going to be here forever, right? He's going to use this as a stepping stone to another job. We understand this, I think. Right. But I think you probably have, maybe a 4 or 5 year window to really make something happen, make a deep run in the tournament. So you got to have belief in Pitino, because he's the real deal. And, he was young when he had the Minnesota job, maybe a little bit over his skis.
It's a tough place to coach. That's a really tough place to coach.
But, some of the experience he got, certainly at New Mexico recently, and then what he's doing here at Xavier, he looks like a completely different coach. He looks more comfortable, more relaxed, like he has an idea more of what he wants to do from a culture standpoint and just a developmental standpoint as well. And that was, the big thing about Pitino is he can develop talent. We have seen that. So buy into him. You have a really, really good head coach that isn't going to be here forever. You got a little bit of a window here where you can be aggressive, put a lot of money into that program. And you're in a conference where, the top dogs are really, really good, but it's not like the Big 12 that is super, super deep. So, I think a little bit more money into the program, you could become one of the best teams in the Big East. And from there's an opportunity to make a run in the Big Dance.
All right. That's a good one. That is a good one. Yeah, And I think they are. The thing about Richard Pitino, because I know there was a conversation about who they should hire. Like, everyone was just assuming that they'd hire Chris Mack because that's kind of what Xavier's done. And to my understanding, a big portion of why they brought in Richard Pitino was because he'd had success in this NIL era. And that's what you were looking for as we kind of move things. Chris Mack has not had that success in this NIL era. So I think they're going to be churning out some winners here soon. This year might be taking some lumps. I don't know if that spread's come out on tomorrow's game yet. I can't wait. Me and my buddies were talking about that because we're all going down to Cintas tomorrow. Everyone's going to Cintas tomorrow. Let me know. Have a beer together. And finally, in our New Year's resolutions, we are going to be talking about FCC. What can FCC do in the year of our Lord 2026 to improve the franchise? All right, let's move on to buy or sell here. So let's move on to buy or sell. The first buy or sell I have for you here in the final 10 minutes of the show is buy or sell after last night. Drake May is the MVP of the league after Matthew Stafford's performance last night. Drake May is the MVP in the NFL.
I was thinking about this. I really don't know. I was hoping to really have a nice take to come in and say who the MVP is. It felt like Stafford kind of had it in the bag, and it's like, yeah, they're going to Atlanta. They're playing better of late, but they were, 6-9 going into the game last night. And it wasn't just that they lost. He had, 3 interceptions, a pick six, should have been 2 pick six. Xavier Watts wasn't able to quite stay in bounds there. The year he's had is sensational. At the age, he's 37. Then again, he does have, McVay, and he has Puka Nacua, and he had Devontae Adams for much of the year there as well. I'm not in a spot where I feel really strongly one way or the other. I think Drake May certainly has reaped the benefits of a very weak schedule. They just beat the Jets, which, the Jets are just
one win over a team with a winning record.
Right. So, I can't just cop out here, but I think I kind of still would give it to Stafford. Because I think a lot of people thought he was going to sit the last week, and then McVay said after the game, that ain't happening. They've lost their past 2 games, so they're going to play their starters against Arizona. Arizona, obviously, is a dumpster fire. I think there's an opportunity for him to pad some stats there in what's basically a meaningless game for them. But I think for now, my heart says I got to stay with Stafford.
Okay, so a good way to base this opinion, because I was kind of floating back and forth because of everything that you just said. Drake May has played. They've beaten one team with a winning record. It's the Bills. Other than that, they've had a great season. I think that they are a serious team, but they've only beaten one team. Outside of those 2 guys you named, I'm looking at the betting odds. Do you know the next 2 behind Drake May and Matthew Stafford are? I'm just doing this for the caveat.
Is it a running back or no?
They are 2 quarterbacks.
2 quarterbacks. Okay.
They both have plus 18,000 odds, so they're not really considered. But it did surprise me that these 2 were the third and fourth.
Just off the rip here, your boy Caleb, he's not on there.
Caleb Williams is tied for third. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
With this other guy, also one of my guys.
Also one of your guys. One of our guys or one of your guys?
I don't know if he's your guy. Okay. He's my guy for sure.
All right, so
I pronounced their team's name weird.
Oh, Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, he's our guy. Come on, Reed.
All right, Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, Trevor Lawrence. They're both. But Matthew Stafford's plus 300, which makes Drake May minus 400.
Jeez.
So they think Drake May in year 2 is going to take that MVP award. I think I'll buy this just based off of that. Just based off of that. I think if I was voting, I'd still give it to Matthew Stafford. The Patriots, I think they're a great team. I think Drake May is the real deal. I think when we talk about AFC quarterbacks, it's just another name to throw on there. Because that was always the talk. Look at the AFC. They've got Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. And now you get to throw in the name Drake May. Similar to a couple years ago, we threw C.J. Stroud on that list. And we get to once again throw Trevor Lawrence back on that list. So, I think I'm buying that he is the MVP. So, while we're talking about this, we're going into the NFL. Every spot is locked up other than the AFC North, obviously the Ravens and Steelers, and the NFC South, the Bucks and the Panthers. So the question is this. Going into the postseason, I will give you either the 2024 draft class and their teams. So we are looking at the Bears. We are looking at the Broncos. We are looking at help me out here. It's the Bears, Broncos, Patriots. So it's those three. Am I missing any other 2024 draft?
No. Falcons, no, obviously.
That would be it. That would be it. So in reminder that those teams are going to have either the 1 or 2 seeds.
Correct, yes.
Those teams are either going to have the 1 or 2 seeds. So they'll be seeded highest. Or I'll give you the field. Which one are you taking? Are you taking, I guess what I'm saying is are you taking the Bears, Patriots, Broncos, or are you taking the Rams, Seahawks, and the rest of the guys?
I'll take the field. It wouldn't surprise me. I think the Patriots have a real shot at winning the Super Bowl. I think Denver's a year or two early. Don't consider them having a really good shot, and I don't think the Bears have a shot either. I just don't trust their quarterback. So pretty easy for me. I'll take the field. I'll take guys like Jalen Hurts, guys like Josh Allen, guys like Brock Purdy, guys like Matt Stafford, guys like Sam Darnold. So I'm pretty convicted there. I'll take the field. But it's a great question because you're right. Going to probably have both 1 seeds.
We're going to have both 1 seeds. The Bears will be the 2 seed in the NFC. It's really interesting because I really like this conversation. I really like every time that we really are really high on quarterbacks, more than any other position, there is a great majority that go, he's going to be a bust. You're looking at, they did this with Trevor Lawrence before he came in the league. Really didn't do this with Joe Burrow. They did this with Caleb Williams, and they did this kind of with this entire 2024. Everyone's drafting these 2024 quarterbacks. It's going to be terrible. We're already in year 2. Bo Nix has made the postseason twice. Drake May is going to win the MVP. Caleb Williams is going to get the 2 seed for the Chicago Bears, a perennial loser. You're looking at Jaden Daniels from last year who made the NFC Championship. So we're not to the point, and everyone wants to compare them to Joe Burrow's draft class, 2020. That is Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, Jordan Love, and Jalen Hurts. Obviously, there's a Super Bowl win there. Obviously, there's an AFC Championship there. Obviously, there's Justin Herbert, who's shown to be great. And obviously, Jordan Love, who is an up-and-down player, but is shown a lot of promise. So we're not there yet. We're not there yet to say the 2024 draft class is better than 2020. And to be honest, I don't know if we'll ever get there, but it is getting closer. It is this 2024 draft class, which was labeled as a really, really good class for quarterbacks. It is appearing to be that way, to where they are putting out. I mean, all of those guys that we've named are franchise guys. I don't know if they'll be elite. Bo Nix will never be elite, but he's a franchise quarterback. Drake May might be elite. Caleb Williams might be elite, but they've already proven to be franchise quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels was elite last year, and he's hurt a lot. He's a franchise quarterback. So I think that 2024 draft class is already aging very, very well here in their sophomore season. All right, final. We'll move it over to college football because I do want to ask you, because you've got your ear to the floor much more closely than I do when it comes to college football. Buying or selling Ohio State to win the college football playoff?
I'll sell.
Yes!
I'll sell.
Love it.
I'll sell.
Reasoning?
Yeah. Tough to repeat. Doesn't happen a ton. We've seen it a couple times. Bama did it years ago. Georgia did it recently. Very tough to do. And also tough when you got a play caller that's been your guy all year, and all of a sudden he's still going to be around the team, but the way he called plays in the Big Ten championship game, you didn't love that. So Ryan Day's taking over play calling once again. And when Ryan Day was the play caller at Ohio State, they constantly fell short of their expectations and their aspirations. So that concerns me a little bit. They can't run the ball. Bo Jackson's an incredible player, but if they find themselves in a game where they just got to drop back and throw it, I thought going into the Indiana game they would have no issue. Yeah, drop back throw. You had Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Julian Sain, great quarterback, should be fine. It didn't work out necessarily that way. They really struggled in a game like that. They struggled in a game when Julian Sain actually had a little bit of dirt on his jersey, something that hasn't really happened to him throughout the entirety of the year. I do think there's some really good teams in this playoff. It feels like there's better teams in this year's playoff than last year's, where there wasn't you always knew Ohio State had the
Right,
talent.
I
but
agree.
beyond them last year, it was like, is there really a team that's worthy of winning the national title? And then they played Oregon, and that was kind of the national title game. And, of course, that happened in the quarterfinals, which is an issue with the format, but we won't get into that on today's show. But, yeah, we ran through our predictions last week on the show. I went with Georgia. I definitely think Georgia could lose to Ole Miss. But these quarterfinals, they're going to bang. They're going to be absolutely incredible. I think Texas Tech's the real deal as well. Oregon also good. That's going to be a tremendous game. And Indiana, of course, has looked like the best team throughout the whole year. So I'll sell. I think someone will knock them off.
All right. I love to hear that. I'll also sell because I believe in God. And I don't think God would let Ohio State be repeat champions, back-to-back champions. At least I got to believe in something, and there's good in this world, and that would mean that maybe Satan's winning the battle of good and evil if Ohio State wins back-to-back seasons. Let me ask you this, final one before we move on with the show, move on to your show. There will be a major upset in college football this weekend. And by major upset, there's 3 games that are touchdown spreads. One of those 3 touchdown spreads will see the underdog win. You buying that?
I'll buy that.
Who do you like?
I think they all got a chance. I'm not going to say Miami's going to win outright. I don't think that'll happen, but I think Ole Miss has a lot of life. Georgia, I just said I picked them to win the national title, but Chambliss, the quarterback for Ole Miss, is tremendous. And if they can't, rush him and knock him around a little bit, he can be really dangerous. And if it gets, tight late, I think Ole Miss has a chance. Texas Tech only a 1.5 dog, but I do think they'll win. I know that's not one of the ones you were mentioning. I think Alabama's got some life in the Rose Bowl as well. Okay.
I think I'll buy that too. I think that the 3 teams I'm talking about, Ole Miss, Alabama, or Miami, will win one of those 3 teams. And I think, the biggest thing the biggest problem I've always had with college football, there's just not nearly enough underdogs winning. There's just not nearly enough upsets, in my opinion. You can take that and shove it where the sun don't shine. I don't really care. But, yeah, it's my opinion. We'll be back tomorrow at 10 a to talk about Xavier, talk about some other stuff. We'll talk probably about the Reds a little bit more. Hopefully we'll be having on a guest to talk Xavier. If not, we'll be talking Reds on New Year's Eve. Everyone stay safe tonight. Have fun. Stone, have a great show. Thank you so much, as always, for being – this was a fun one.
It was.
Sometimes we get off the show and I'm like, that was a great one, that was a bad one. This one was fun. It was laid back. It was a good conversation throughout. You brought the juice on the New Year's resolution. You had much better resolutions than I had. We'll see you guys tomorrow here on Off the Bench, and stay tuned for the Stone Shield Show.
All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. We are here. We are live. It is Tuesday, December 30th. Only 2 more shows here in the year of 2025. Hard to believe we're getting ready to switch the calendars over to 2026, but got the show today. We will be live here at the channel tomorrow as well. Looking forward to really diving into the college football playoffs, the quarterfinals on tomorrow's show. We'll preview all those games. Really looking forward to that. Ohio State, of course, back in action, looking to get back on the right track after losing the Big Ten championship game to Indiana 13-10. They will play the Miami Hurricanes. I'm pretty fired up about that, right? I think Ohio State's certainly the much better team. They're better coach. They got the better roster, but two really big brands, and obviously schools with a history. Several years ago, playing in the national title game, which obviously was an unbelievable finish, and getting those two teams back playing in a huge game, a playoff game, certainly is very exciting. And we're spending a lot of time on tomorrow's show talking about that. We got Jason Williams of the Inquirer. He's a columnist. He, of course, covers sports, writing for the Reds, writing for the Bengals. We're going to have him on. We're going to pick his brain a little bit about the Cincinnati Bengals. He had a piece that went out after the game against the Arizona Cardinals saying, don't be fooled here. These past 2 weeks have kind of been fun, but this organization, this roster, they need wholesale changes. And I got my worries and concerns whether or not this front office, this organization will make those changes. So looking forward to asking Jason some of those questions. Also, we'll roll through our NFL power rankings as we do every Tuesday. The Rams heading in the wrong direction. Always talk about peaking at the right time here in the NFL. Do the Rams peak a little bit too early? We'll talk about that. Also, we'll talk about the Monday Night Football game last night. Of course, featured a Los Angeles Rams loss. Felt like kind of a lock for Atlanta, certainly, to cover the number. 7.5 at home. The Rams got to fly across the country. Lost the Seattle game, of course, there as well. So there's a lot of reason to like Atlanta in this game. Didn't expect them to win, but ultimately that is what happened. And also, Marcus Freeman going to be staying at Notre Dame for 2026 after a lot of buzz around him potentially taking a head job in the National Football League. But appreciate everyone, as always, for hanging out. And we're going to start out today's show with some conversation on Joe Burrow. I do want to revisit this because I think it is very noteworthy and something that we should all be discussing here at this point. Zach has come out and said that Joe's going to play. He's going to play against Cleveland because it's all about finishing the season on the right foot and finishing the season on their terms the way they want to, with obviously 3 consecutive wins. And I was a big advocate, banging the table, saying when Joe Burrow is ready to come back after this toe injury, he absolutely should come back and be the starting quarterback for this franchise. I laid out a bunch of different reasons why I believe that to be the case. Number one, it's his job, right? He is here to be the quarterback of this team, and he is paid big-time money to be the quarterback. Regardless of record, he should be out there for his team. And I think there was an opportunity to generate a little bit of positive momentum. Obviously, when he came back, the Bengals weren't eliminated. It was a long shot, but there was an opportunity to get this thing back on the right track and just kind of let everybody know within the locker room that, hey, we can still do this, right? Our identity as a football team with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow is good enough to get us back to a championship level. And I think offensively, they certainly have shown that. Had the stinker against Baltimore in the frigid temperatures, kind of a one-off. Offensively, you've seen it the past 2 weeks. We understand the Dolphins are terrible. We understand the Cardinals are terrible. But seeing all 3 of those guys out there, coupling them with Chase Brown, coupling them with the best offensive line that Joe Burrow has had throughout his career, product looks pretty dang good offensively. And I think you could argue any given week the best offense in the National Football League. And there was a lot of reasons I thought he should come back. Get the positive momentum. One, it's his job, and that's what, you should do. Your best players should always play regardless of the situation you find yourselves in. Now, I said this several weeks ago that I would sit him down for the Cleveland Brown game, and I still believe that here. It's not going to happen. Zach already said he's playing. He's going to play. The starters are going to play. They're going to go try out and win this game. Now, there is some precedent here. That's not the only reason why I would sit him down, right? Teams do this. Right, you're going to see several teams do this across the NFL. Teams that are in the playoffs and don't really have much of a chance at switching their seed, you're going to see them rest some starters, and some teams that are eliminated, you're going to see them not play some of their franchise players in the final game of the year there as well. And you're kind of seeing this, right, throughout the league. Guys going on IR, right, when maybe it's not that serious of an injury, just kind of sitting them down here for the end of the year where ultimately it doesn't mean much. Now, I'm not going to get up in arms about Joe Burrow playing. This is another opportunity as a fan to sit there and watch Joe Burrow play quarterback, and you should never take that for granted if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan. Regardless of all the turmoil and incompetence that surrounds this organization, getting to watch 9 go out there and play the quarterback position is a privilege. And it's something we shouldn't take lightly, and it's something we should be fired up about each and every week, regardless of this team being eliminated from the playoffs or not. But there is a lot of concern right, going against a team like the Cleveland Browns? Number one, you're at the stage of the year where if you suffered an injury, right, it's going to impact, obviously, your offseason, but also your availability going into 2026. And let me just be very upfront and honest, right, with what's going to happen in this city if Joe Burrow were to get hurt. I don't even like putting that out in the universe, but I'm just saying if he did, people will come after Zac Taylor like they have never come after Zac Taylor before. And people have said some horrible things about Zac Taylor in this town in recent memory, but it will reach a whole new level of horrible if something were to happen seriously to Joe Burrow in this game. As I mentioned, the timeline, right? If something happens here, you're ruining the offseason and you're ruining availability for early in 2026. That would be devastating. That would be very difficult to swallow. And again, it's not like you're saying, hey, sit him down for the final month of the season, the final month and a half, the last stretch of games. Just sitting him down for the final game, right? Something teams do all the time, something this team has done in the past there as well. And you couple it with the fact that it's the Cleveland Browns. Each and every time, for whatever reason, the Cincinnati Bengals in the Joe Burrow era play the Cleveland Browns. Oftentimes they lose the game. For the most part, it's pretty much always competitive. And one thing that is a certain in this game is the pads are popping. People are getting hit all over the place, and specifically number 9 is getting hit. He's going to get hit on Sunday, right? Myles Garrett, best defensive player of my lifetime, he's going after the sack record in the National Football League. Only needs a half sack to tie it and 1 sack to break it. But best believe if he gets that sack in the first quarter, he's looking to create some distance between him and guys like T.J. Watt and Michael Strahan, who currently are tied for the single-season sack record in the National Football League. You're going to see a locked-in, physical, violent beast of a football player in Myles Garrett. And the Bengals' offensive line certainly has been solid over the course of the past few weeks. Joe Burrow has said the best one of his career. We all understand that. Myles Garrett's a totally different beast. We remember what he was able to accomplish all the way back to week 1 this season. He's going to be out with a vengeance in this game. He's going to be coming out with bad intentions. And in a game that really means nothing for Cincinnati, I wouldn't mind sitting him down. Also, I get on people all the time for thinking about, draft picks, right? Oh, where are you going to pick in the draft? Oh, it's better for the team if you lose games. I think that's all rubbish and nonsense and ridiculous. However, the final game of the year, I can entertain it a little bit. Now, with the way things shake out for Cincinnati, it's not going to make much of a difference, right? It's not like they're going to jump way up into the front of the first round, right? That didn't happen. That's not going to happen. But worst case, you get a little bit of a better pick if you were to lose this game. And for what it's worth, I still think Cincinnati wins this game with Joe Flacco, to be completely honest with you, even if Jamar and T are sitting down there as well. I think it's an ugly game. I think it's a more difficult win. But I still feel confident that this team probably would go out there and win with Joe Flacco. But some people will say that, oh, you're changing your mind. That's ridiculous for someone that was banging the table. It's a little bit different here. It's the final game of the year. It's not the final month and a half plus of the year, right? And I came on here and I said you can't play scared, right? And maybe I'm contradicting myself a little bit. I'm a little bit scared of Myles Garrett. And if you got a brain, you're a little bit scared of him too, especially when you have Joe Burrow back there, a guy that's been hit by Myles Garrett a bunch in his career and certainly has been hit a bunch, period, in his career as well. And you couple that with the fact that Myles Garrett is trying to set NFL history in this game, he's going to be locked in. He's going to be out there with bad intentions looking to make a significant impact in this ballgame. Now, from Zac Taylor's perspective, I understand, right? Certainly from a coach's perspective, right? I mean, if you sit there and say, yeah, Zac, Joe's not going to get hurt in this game, I mean, you don't even think about sitting him down. Injury is the only reason that you would even consider sitting him down. And again, if he didn't have a history of getting very injured throughout his career to this point, I'm not thinking about sitting him down either. But we all sit here and say these wins are meaningless. We all laugh at them and say, oh, it's just the Bengals, right? They're winning when they should be winning, right? And that's all fine. But from Zac's perspective, from the coach's perspective, from the front office's perspective, they need to finish this year on a high note. And we all understand the angst around the organization right now, the anger, the frustration. Well, guess what? When this season ends, if they beat Cleveland, the final game of the year, and this season ends and everybody kind of goes away for a little bit. We were talking about this with Joe Danneman. Best thing for everybody involved just to kind of disappear for a little bit, let the year end, and then April rolls around. It's time for the combine, time for the NFL draft, and then we kind of address it again. Well, you bet your bottom dollar if the Bengals win against the Cleveland Browns, Zach's going to be talking about it, and Duke, the once-in-a-blue moon where he shows up and actually addresses the media, he's going to be talking about it as well. Oh, well, we finished the season the way we wanted to. We finished the season outstanding. 3 consecutive wins, really kind of propelling us into 2026 and showing everybody and reminding ourselves, again, of what we're capable as a football team. And I understand that's not ideal. And something I'm going to talk about with Jason Williams here in a couple of minutes is if he's worried about this team saying, you know what, let's just kind of run it back, right? We were able to produce at the end of the year. We won some games. This is what it looks like when Joe Burrow's out there. Yeah, let's bring everybody back. Demetrius Knight, Barrett Carter, you guys want to start next year? Come on back, right? Jordan Battle, right? We picked you a couple of years ago in the draft in the 3rd round. You're not an all-league type of guy, right? But you're in a spot where it's like, we'll get you out there and we'll let you start again for this football team. So I'm a little bit worried about that, and I'm going to ask Jason Williams some of those questions when he pops on with us here in a couple of minutes. But my stance on the Joe Burrow thing is I think it's okay if you sit him down for the final game of the year. I wouldn't mind, right, to sit him down and say, you know what, it's the last game, doesn't really mean anything. It's a ferocious defense. They've hit you a ton in your career. Myles Garrett, he's an incredible player. Let's just sit down, right? You came back. You gave us all you had. It was outstanding. You played really great. Still came up short as a team. But we'll sit you down, and we'll get you ready for 2026. That's not going to happen. He's going to be out there playing with this team. And, you know, with him out there, again, I'm not up in arms about this. I don't think it's the end of the world that he's going to be out there. But just understand that if something were to happen to number 9 in this game, it would be a travesty, and it would be absolutely devastating. So I was always in on Joe Burrow playing when he was ready to come back. But this week, final week of the year, there's some precedent. Teams around the league do it. We understand this. Maybe you sit him down for this game. Don't have to worry about Myles Garrett. You watch this one from the sideline and kind of go from there. But obviously that is not going to be what's happening for Joe Burrow, as he will be out there against the Cleveland Browns. And we'll see if the Bengals can put things together and ultimately have a big-time win against Cleveland to end the year with 3 consecutive wins. But we'll all have a close eye on that and see if ultimately that ends up becoming true or not. All right, it is time to welcome in our guest. He is a good friend. His name is Jason Williams, and he is a columnist over at the Inquirer. And Jason, appreciate you stopping by and making some time for us. How's it going, man?
What's up, Stone? Hey, you're doing great stuff, man. I was excited to see you get on with Chatterbox. Love the show. Loved your segment with my buddy Gordon Whitmire last week, and it's a great honor to be on with you.
Awesome. I appreciate the kind words. Gordon was excellent. Had some really good insight there on the Cincinnati Reds. So it's good to see you again. It's been a minute. You know, seeing you late at nights at the 700 WLW station. It's been a little bit, but thanks for making some time and stopping by.
Stone cold.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll have a few Reds questions at the end of this segment here. But you wrote about this in your column, and I completely agree with you. There's some people certainly within the organization that are going to get all excited about the success Cincinnati's had against bad teams the past 2 weeks, and you were like, hey, let's pump the brakes here. Understand that there's a lot of changes that still need to be made on this roster, and we can't afford just to run things back, specifically on defense, going into 2026. My question for you is, are you concerned that that might happen for this team? Because we kind of saw it last year, right? They missed the playoffs, of course, last year, but the defense played a little bit better down the stretch, and you saw some re-signings, and you saw a lot of, we're just going to stand pat here and roll these same guys out. Clearly, it did not work. Are you worried they might do that again going into this offseason?
100% worried about that. We've seen this time and again, and you have to keep in mind that Bengals ownership always thinks they're close. They always think they're close. Last year it was, they had those few close losses earlier in the season. Money Mac wasn't great. He missed that field goal in overtime against Baltimore at home last year. What were some other? Trying to think back of some other really close losses last year, but the reason why all the defense had just made this stop here or there, and so they felt like, hey, look, Joe Burrow last year played at MVP level. Jamar Chase was the Triple Crown winner. These are the 2 best players at their position, I think. And I know people could argue that, and that's fine. But the mentality was, okay, if we just make a field goal. We know Money Mac's good, so he's going to make those field goals again. If we just develop some of these younger defensive players, and they just become even a mediocre average defense. All right, we can do that. Well, the league's too tough. The league adjusts. The league constantly adjusts, and so really that's been the mentality of this team ever since they went to the Super Bowl. Is that we made it to the Super Bowl with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So the mentality is continue to run it back, and we see what's happened here. I've said this a lot. I've written about it a lot. I know you guys on Chatterbox have talked about it, and other places have, but I really think I don't think it can be stated enough that when they let Jesse Bates walk out the door after that AFC Championship loss in almost 3 years ago, the 2022 season, but it was in January of 23. I thought that was a huge mistake and was a turning point for this franchise and this defense, that they have not gotten better ever since then. And so, yeah, am I concerned that they are seeing this and what's happening and blowing out Miami, and then blowing out Arizona, and I don't like being negative. Like, it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch these guys when they're at their best. The offense is humming along now, but you can't dismiss the fact that Arizona was really playing a preseason game. Lots of second and third stringers out there. Obviously, they're down to Jacoby Brissett, a career backup quarterback. Right. They're playing out the string. There is the Raiders. So I was thinking they might be the worst team in the NFL, but the Raiders are really, really wretched. So, but nonetheless, one of the worst teams in the NFL. And I pointed out in my column the other day that, hey, it was just 2 weeks ago, when it felt like rock bottom after they lost to Baltimore. And, Joe Burrow said, losing team, bad football teams do losing things or something along those lines. And he was calling the Bengals a bad football team, and they don't just suddenly get better in a matter of 2 weeks. So hopefully Joe Burrow's voice will carry a lot of weight with the front office this winter, and that they will somehow, some way go out and spend some money in free agency the way they did after 2020, when it was the class where they got Trey Hendrickson. I believe they got Von Bell that year. Was it Mike Hilton? So you hope that after 2 years of this, Burrow at his best last year, and they couldn't do it. Burrow hurt this year, Joe Flacco filling in like Joe Burrow, and they still couldn't do it. You hope that they will now see, like, hey, we need to go back at free agency the way they did when they got Trey Hendrickson and Mike Hilton and those guys, and to fill in the gaps, and then try to make a run.
You look at this 2023 draft class, and all of a sudden you look down and you're like, well, there's starting to be some production here. We'll talk about Miles in a second. I know you're not ready to anoint him as kind of a bona fide starter going forward, but you got him who's playing better. You got DJ Turner, of course. Jordan Battle's starting for you. Charlie Jones is a kick return specialist. Chase Brown has been unbelievable. Yoshi, when Burrow's out there, has been solid. And then your seventh-round pick, DJ Ivey, has really come on here on third downs as it relates to covering tight ends. My biggest takeaway is, yeah, great, they're playing solid now, but it took too long, right? There was too many years of them not playing good football. What's your kind of takeaway on that class, and specifically Myles Murphy? Do you feel like he can be a piece for this team going forward?
I do. He's played well really after the bye week. And so after really doing absolutely nothing for 2.5 seasons, he's all of a sudden come on. And, I think that's a testament certainly to him hanging in there and working hard. And Al Golden probably seeing something and helping him to develop. But I still don't think that just, a half of a season or even less than a half of a season is enough yet to feel like, okay, well, we got that slot kind of figured out. And in saying that, Trey Hendrickson's not coming back. So what else do you have? Like, you pretty much have to rely on Myles Murphy at this point, because Trey Hendrickson's not coming back. You've got all kinds of issues at the other defensive end with Shamar Stewart, and who knows what's going to happen there. And so at the very least, you need Myles Murphy for a depth piece. And so whether we like it or not, Miles Murphy is going to be a starter next year, and so you better hope that this is not just a flash in the pan, that this is really a result of him now figuring it out and developing and then figuring out how to be a pro and play at this level, and that he keeps running with it. I just still think that, again, a small sample size and against some of the competition they played, I'm still thinking back to that, some of those games even where he did overall play well, some of the angles that he took, and he's not the only one, certainly. I'm not picking on him whatsoever. But you're like some of those, I remember the what was the first touchdown run Miami had, where he had a really bad angle, and it's like, oof, like you've still got a long way to go. And again, you don't want to pick on him for one play, or you're going to miss some plays, of course. But when the microscope is on you, and it's on him, and it's on a lot of these defensive players, like those kinds of things stand out right now to those of us who, those are like you and I in the media, or those, are the fans who are watching this. So, like Miles Murphy at this point, you can take that to the bank. Like he's a starting defensive end next year. Whatever happens from in the Cleveland game, or excuse me, or in the offseason. But you still got to address that defensive line. I mean, that's something that there has to be improvement there. When you look around the league and you look at the best teams, most of them have a fantastic defensive line. You win in this league in the trenches with and a great quarterback, great offensive line, great defensive line, and a quarterback. You can rush the quarterback and have a quarterback that can throw it. So they have to address the defensive line.
Lots of reasons to be frustrated, but I think if I had to pick my top reason, I think it's got to be the safety position, because we all sat here last offseason coming in and was like, you got to do something. Whether you draft somebody or bring in a new piece, this Geno Stone stuff isn't working out, and all he has done is literally play almost every snap for this defense. Any thoughts on that? I will never understand why he has played so much.
Well, he's cheap. I mean, he was willing to he took a pay cut last year. That was there was certainly a lot of buzz. It's hard to pinpoint, the biggest disappointment in terms of what they didn't address on the defense in the offseason. But you can certainly make the argument that safety was the number one spot that they didn't address last offseason, that they didn't do anything at that position. And especially, we've been used to around here some great safety play. Obviously, I mentioned Jesse Bates, Von Bell. Was really good there for a while, and had that veteran defensive quarterback, back there. And I agree with you. Like Jesse Bates, Geno Stone is. You hate to. The whole defense has been bad. You hate to single out one or two guys. But Geno Stone, they're almost is like a model for the fact that they're the worst defense in all of football. And he's the worst player on the worst defense in all of football. The amount of tackles that he has missed has just been staggering. Watching him tackle is like, it's honestly like watching a youth football game, like you've never been taught like the fundamentals of tackling. And it's like, what the heck happened here? Yeah. I don't know the answer to that. You just knew when he was willing to take a pay cut last year, you're like, they're cutting corners on this. And so they're going to save some money, and they're going to see if like he still kind of can recapture some of that, what he was in Baltimore. He was a solid player, wasn't, not a superstar, but like when you look at that defensive, I mean, I was just looking at it yesterday. The fact that they're the worst defense in all of the NFL, and then you really dig down into why. Well, Geno Stone is tops on that list as a big reason why.
Reed Mouse mentioned this yesterday, and I kind of laughed at him when he said it, and I started to think about it a little bit more, and I was like, you know what, maybe there's some truth to this. The Bengals, of course, last offseason, the big thing was, okay, Jamar T, get him paid, figure that out. And you look back and it's like, well, they paid those two guys, but then neglected the defense. Do you think just because they're, kind of a mom and pop run organization that maybe they got all caught up in paying those two guys and literally just didn't have the time or the brain power to handle the defense too? Or am I just completely making that up?
I think it's a legit question or thought. But really what it boils down to is that they have poured all their resources into offense. They're enamored by offense, and frankly, you don't give them credit for uh, some of their talent evaluation. Certainly at wide receiver, the way they, Chase Brown was a great pickup. He's ascending toward a star in this league. You know, Jaceki was a really nice pickup, ahead of last season. So on offense, and Marius Mims was seems like he was a good draft pick. Fairchild's come on. The offensive line all of a sudden I think is really gelling and coming along. So the Bengals organization, because and I hate to be cynical, and and again, like I'm very critical of the organization, having covered politics, having seen the Bengals from both that side of covering politics, and now covering them from the sports side. And I covered some of them earlier in my career when I was at the Cincinnati Post. I used to do some stuff helping our beat writers back then. I've seen this team from different perspectives than a lot of media people, and that's me. That's not me bragging. It's just I've seen how they operate on the stadium stuff. I've seen how they operate on the football side, and they're enamored by offense because offense sells tickets. They know as long as they have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, they're going to sell tickets, and that you, the fan, are going to believe that they have a chance. And so I really truly believe that they're like, okay, we got these guys. We know with Joe Burrow what he can do. He took us to a Super Bowl. He can do a lot. And again, like you look back at last year, like look how close we were. And it's just if a couple of these younger defensive players. So then the Bengals always think they're close, always. Like they've always felt like that in their entire existence. And so they really thought like, oh, okay, Lou Anarumo, we'll fire him. We'll bring in Al Golden, a fresh voice. Some of these younger guys, will go more all in on them. And there's no way we can be as bad as we were last year. We don't think we're going to be a great defense, but we're going to be better than we were last year. And we're bound to hit on some of these guys that we've drafted. And that was the mentality, and it was it just hasn't worked. Because they haven't evaluated talent well enough on the defensive side, and it'll be interesting to see like what impact Al Golden is going to have, longer term here on the player evaluation piece and moving along, and what they're going to do in the draft this year. But I feel like you've got to go all in this draft on defense, and you got to go all in on defense and whatever free agent money they're going to spend.
Jason Williams joining us live here on the show from the Inquirer for a couple of more minutes. I was talking about this before you popped on. Joe Burrow, of course, topic of conversation right now is would you play him, would you not play him? I was banging the table when he was coming back from injury, like, yes, he should be out there. He should be playing, absolutely. He's the quarterback of this team, and that's kind of his duty, and you should try to play your best players when you can. This week, I wouldn't hate sitting him down for the final game. There's precedent. Teams around the league do it. If it were up to me, I probably would sit him down for this final game. Zach obviously is not doing that. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, Joe Burrow calls the shots. And
Yep.
Joe Burrow says he's going to play. Hey, I'm healthy. I'm going to play. That's that. And I see the argument on both sides. If it were up to me, I'm with you, Stone, that I'd set him down. And, hey, there's no point here in risking any injury in a meaningless game when you've got all off season coming up here for him to keep developing and growing and have some positive momentum going into the off season, regardless of what happens. I don't know where you stand on this, Stone, but I'm not a believer that like, oh, we won 3 in a row at the end of the season. Awesome. That's some great momentum going
Right.
into next year. Like this
Exactly.
is professional football, man.
Yeah.
You look around the league, the teams that have gone from really, really good, like the Kansas City Chiefs, or on the other side, the New England Patriots. Like there is no such thing as momentum to carry you into next year, unless you win, you make a deep playoff run, or win a Super Bowl. Certainly, I think there's probably some momentum you can take off of that. But yeah, I'm with you. Like I was in the camp that I didn't think that Joe Burrow should come back this year.
Mm.
And I know they weren't mathematically done when he was healthy and ready to come back, but they weren't going to make the playoffs this year, no matter what, because of that defense. This season was lost a long time ago. It didn't matter if Joe Burrow was healthy or not. We were going to see if he was healthy, we were going to see a replay of last year where he played really well, probably for the entire season, and they still missed it by a game or two. So yeah, I'm of the mind that they should have rested him, but this is the power of Joe Burrow. What Joe Burrow says, I'm playing, I'm healthy, I want to play, I want to go out there and have fun. He calls the shots in that organization. Done deal. He's playing Sunday. I actually think we're going to have a much better game this Sunday than we've had the last few weeks. I'm really looking forward to it. Actually, I know that sounds weird because these are two bad teams, but you got a Super Bowl defense with the Browns, and you got
Yep.
a Super Bowl offense with the Bengals, and so this should be a fun game.
Yeah, I'm with you. Totally agree. Should be a good one to end the year. Where are you at with Zach here? Does he deserve a lot of credit for keeping them together and getting some wins here when you see other teams across the league kind of quitting? You saw it with the Arizona
Yeah.
Cardinals certainly last week. Or does he just deserve more blame for, missing the playoffs once again?
I'm a big Zach fan, and
Me
I've
too.
written that multiple times in my columns. And I think anyone who's the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals takes on a lot more than any other head coach in the NFL.
Yeah.
The Bengals, their approach is that the front office doesn't talk, and that during the season, and rarely even during the off season, and they leave their head coach out there to answer for their entire organization more so than any other team in football does. And so he's getting asked questions about things that really has no real power over. Questions that we would like to be able to ask the front office folks. Duke's being or Zach's being asked those things. So I think when you throw that in there, and the pressure just of that alone, of carrying the weight of the organization from the off the field standpoint, whereas Burrow is carrying it on from the on field standpoint. There's that piece, and then I think Zac Taylor's a great culture guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that can sound a little Pollyanna, and certainly I know my bud Gordon Whitmire has a completely different opinion when it comes to chemistry and when it comes to professional clubhouses or locker rooms. But I especially think in football, it's a big deal, and especially on this team when you've got a Super Bowl caliber offense and the worst defense. So you've got such a divide in that locker room from I don't know if it's talent. Yeah, I guess it is. It's a talent standpoint, how they play, whatever. And you saw those little cracks after, what was it, the Bears game, I believe, or the Jets game, when Chase Brown
Mm-hmm.
popped off, and paraphrasing so many words, he's like, "We did our job and they didn't."
Yeah.
You couldn't get a stop, and Zac Taylor, the way he handled that, that's a classic case where I think some old school coaches would throw that player right under the bus to the media the next time he got. But Zac Taylor turned around the next day and just told reporters, "Hey, we've talked about it. It's not how we do things. I don't expect it to happen again. High character guy. Love Chase Brown. Boom, done. End of story." I thought that was a big moment for them. I thought it
Me
showed
too.
a true. That was a great example of the culture that Zac Taylor's created and the kind of impact that he has. Um, I like that about him a lot. I do think that uh, I think there are a lot of, I think, go over the teams that they played the last few weeks. Or Arizona. Look at Arizona. I mean, the Bengals could have been that team. They could have turned into that team here. But I think it's a big credit to Zac Taylor. And certainly Joe Burrow coming back, and I think that energized the team a lot. But Zac Taylor and the chemistry and keeping those guys together, I know we've talked a lot. You guys talked about the Cody Ford, like that. Even too, I thought it wasn't just a fun play, I think that was a big part of the culture piece here. Like, I'm going to keep these guys engaged. We're going to have some fun here, even though we're out of it. And so we get this opportunity. Like, this is going to be a big energizer, a big confidence builder, a fun thing for all these guys if we can get this play and execute it. And lo and behold, they did. And look what it's done. We've all been talking about it. It's there's been national story. The national folks have talked about it. Even Zac Taylor himself said he wanted to keep the offensive line room energized, and I think he energized the entire team and city by doing that. Fans loved it, and so I think that play was a model of him and the kind of the culture that he's built and created and maintained and helped to keep this team together. So I think that right there was a great example of the impact that Zac Taylor's had.
No doubt about it. Last question for you, Jason. One
Yeah.
Reds question before we get out of here. They signed J.J. Bleday. They made the trade for Myers. Do you anticipate anything else happening? I think we're all waiting. Just one bat. Give us somebody that isn't just a platoon guy. Do you think they will do anything, and is it a massive mistake if they don't?
I do believe they're trying to do something. I still believe they're trying to go get Luis Robert.
Even after these two moves, you think they're still
okay? I do. That's been a 2-year thing. I know you and Gordon touched on that, and you talked more about that, so I'm not going to go too far into that. But those guys have this isn't a one-off here where they just made a cold call. The Reds and the White Sox have been talking about this for now 2 off seasons.
Right.
So I think the Reds really want him. I think they really want to make it work. I'd like to see him make it work. But I do believe there's a legitimate bona fide effort there. And I was one of the few voices on this that, the Reds, even though it didn't work out, even though they came up $25 million short, they put a legit effort. That was a serious offer into Kyle Schwarber. That said a lot about them. That said that they are. It kind of bucked some of the narrative about ownership. And again, I'm with fans, like, be critical and hold ownership accountable. But there is an effort here to try to do something within the resources they have now. I do believe ownership is very concerned about this potential work stoppage coming after this season. I think that they're really struggling with, what I think. Well, when they decided to freeze payroll and keep it basically the same, that said that they were concerned about what could happen. I know you can say, well, you don't have to pay players during a work stoppage. Well, right, but you're also not making any money during a work stoppage either. So, within the framework of what they have in their resources and what Nick Krall's doing, they're not just sitting on their hands, I guess is ultimately what I'm trying to say. They are working it, and I think it'll certainly be a massive disappointment if they don't get anyone. But I don't think it'll be because of lack of effort. And I know, again, we're going to sit here and say, well, they didn't go 151 million for Kyle Schwarber. Like, what fans or everyone has to understand is that Philadelphia was always the favorite. They were always the favorite. He loves Philadelphia. And so Philadelphia told him, go out and look on the open market and then come back to us before. Look, I think we could all be really ticked off if he would have gone to Pittsburgh or Baltimore.
Right.
And if he would have gone to Baltimore for 150 million and he would have said, nah, I'm going to go here. He didn't do that. He went back to ultimately what's become his home.
Yeah.
So they were always the favorite. They were going to match whatever the Reds were going to offer. The Reds could have come in at 155, and the Phillies would have come in at 160. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like they were always the favorite to keep him. But I think, again, when you look back, and there's no consolation. Oh, we almost got Kyle Schwarber. Oh, we put a serious offer toward Kyle Schwarber. But I think the bigger picture of that was that this is something we haven't seen in several years, that there is an effort there to do something beyond just relying on your prospects to keep developing and growing. There is some effort there within some framework of a tight budget to do what they can do.
No doubt. I guess we'll have to wait and see. You never know with these Cincinnati teams, Jason. They'll catch you by surprise, and sometimes they'll just sit around and do nothing. But lastly, let us know where we can find you on social media, and if there's anything else we need to know about where we can find all your work.
Cincinnati.com.
Yep.
You can just search my name there at J Williams Cincy Cincy on Twitter. Shoot me an email to jwilliams@inquirer.com. I get a ton of emails, lots, and sometimes I use those. I don't use people's names, but people send me emails and I'll respond to them in a column. Mm-hmm. Those have been very popular among readers. People really like those. So jwilliams@inquirer.com. Love to hear from you, and any questions, and might end up popping up in a future column.
Awesome. Well, Jason, great stuff, man. I appreciate you making some time. It's good to see you again. Would love to do it again soon, and Happy New Year.
Anytime. Thank you. Sir. Happy New Year to you and the Chatterbox viewers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Take care. Jason Williams, great stuff on the Cincinnati Bengals. Appreciate him giving us some time here. Obviously, holiday season, New Year's on the horizon, but he carved out some time for us here on a Tuesday. We appreciate the heck out of him. Used to see Jason a lot at the radio station. He subs in over there sometimes, and I was a producer over there, so good to see him again. It had been a while, but that interview will be out later today on YouTube. Also, of course, available in podcast form there as well, so make sure you check that out. Some great stuff on the Cincinnati Bengals. And a Reds question there at the end as well. Appreciate Jason Williams stopping by and making some time for us here on the show. All right, got about 15 minutes or so here left today. Let's dive into these power rankings. We do it every Tuesday, only a couple more, really. We'll do one more next week, kind of just ranking all the playoff teams, but this, I guess, is kind of our last top 10 that we will do here on the show. And we do have some changes. Had the Rams at the top for a couple of weeks, but they are heading in the wrong direction, so they're going to slip down a few more spots. At 10, I've got the Buffalo Bills. Of course, they lost last week to the Philadelphia Eagles, 13-12 at home. Really had 0 points for what felt like the majority of that football game. Very evident they've got some serious holes on their team. They are very Josh Allen reliant. We have said that all year long, and they had a play schemed up to perfection there to win it on the 2-point try, and Allen just missed, right? That's not a throw that you see these elite quarterbacks miss. I'm not, knocking Josh Allen, but I think Buffalo will take that 10 out of 10 times. Oh, 2-point play, and he's open. Josh just has to make the throw, moving out to his left a little bit. Sign me up. Well, it didn't work out, and candidly, he missed by kind of a mile, really, there on that 2-point try. I said in the moment that I would probably just kick it, go for overtime. You had all the momentum there. Philadelphia had, less than 20 yards on offense in the second half. So I would have just kicked it and said, you know what, we got Josh Allen, we got the momentum, we'll handle things in overtime. They opted to go for it, had the perfect play, had great execution. Quarterback just couldn't make the throw. But they're always going to be dangerous in the postseason. We've said that it kind of feels like their year to get it done just because of the way the rest of the AFC looks. But this Buffalo team, they've had much better teams over the course of the past few years. I'll always give them a chance with Josh Allen. I always feel good. They got the best quarterback in the AFC playoffs, right? I don't think that really is a question here at this point. So I still got him in the top 10, but that was an ugly loss to Philadelphia, and the Bills check in at the 10 spot. Speaking of Philadelphia, I've got them at number 9. Last week they were unranked. They beat the Bills, of course, by 1 point. Look, it's not pretty. They're not a fun team to watch. They've done this several times throughout the year where they just have these stinker halves where they just don't do anything on offense other than punt the ball. That defense is really good, particularly the defensive line. Jalen Carter is just a menace out there. And I trust Jalen Hurts. He's thrown more picks this year than he typically does. But I thought he did, and it sounds crazy to say, but in the Buffalo game when things weren't there, he was just like, I'll throw it away. I'm not going to do anything dumb. I'm going to lean on my defense. I know my defense has been playing really well. They were playing really well in the game, and fortunately for him, they were able just to hold on for dear life. I think a lot of quarterbacks in that spot where nothing's going well offensively might have the urge to try to force something, really make a mistake, ultimately lose the game. Jalen Hurts did not do that. He deserves credit for that. And, I'm still holding on to that belief that he'll play well in the playoffs because that's what he has done throughout his career. And they're going to win the division. They're going to have a home playoff game. You don't want to go into Philadelphia in the postseason. It is not an easy place to go and play. And, it feels like there's not really any elite teams here, and the defending Super Bowl champions feel like they have a reasonable shot to get back there, despite how incompetent they can be at times on the offensive side. But Philly checks in at number 9. At 8, I had the Bears. They actually move up a spot. Had them at 9 last week, and despite losing to the San Francisco 49ers, I'll bump them up a little bit. Caleb Williams, his name's getting thrown in the MVP conversation. That's a 2-horse race here at this point. We'll talk about that more later in the week. But, you got to give him credit. Ben Johnson's terrific. What he schemes up offensively, the run game, right? I think people get lost a little bit with Ben Johnson and think he's just this pass game guy and this trick play guy, and he certainly loves his trick plays, but it's very Shanahan-esque where he wants to run the football, and what he's done with DeAndre Swift has been insane. Manungai, of course, the 7th rounder, has been tremendous for them there as well, kind of a 2-horse backfield, so to speak. And then Williams, he's frustrating, but he makes some spectacular plays, missed a few layups as he always does. But, I got to give Chicago some credit. They're not going to go on a run in the playoffs. I would be shocked if they did, but, based on how some things are spilling out around the rest of the league, and, they've won a ton of games. They deserve a lot of credit for it. I've got them at 8. 7, Denver. Last week I had them at 8. They beat the Chiefs on Christmas, 20-13. Again, they kind of feel similar to the Bears, where it's like, you could convince me they get to the Super Bowl, right? I'm not going to say they're going to win it, but you could convince me they get there. But you also could say they're one and done, and they get blown out in the first game. And they might have a bye, they might not. But they're very well in a spot where it's like, yeah, they're pretty, great year, but you lost right away in the playoffs. The defense is real. I don't put the defense in the same category as I put the Texans. We'll talk about them in a second, or the Seattle Seahawks for that matter there as well. But defense is really good. Bo Nix, it's a roller coaster ride. Sometimes it's really good. Sometimes it's really not. I trust their head coach. Significant home field advantage there at Mile High. AFC's wide open. They have a shot, but there's some other teams I feel a little bit more confident in. Denver at 7. Jacksonville 6. I wanted to put them a little bit higher. Credit them for winning. They're on a tear here. It wouldn't have surprised me if the Colts picked up a game there, right, at home, season on the line, desperation heave. Jaguars hadn't really faced much adversity recently, but credit to them. They made enough plays at the end. Trevor Lawrence playing the best football of his career. Liam Cohen's a stud. He's not getting much love because he's down in Jacksonville, a team that's been in the basement of the NFL for what feels like my entire life. All the credit's going to these other first-year head coaches, and Mike Vrabel, first year with New England, obviously, and Ben Johnson. Kyle Shanahan, we've been banging the table for him as far as the coach of the year. We'll talk about him in a second, but Liam Cohen's been terrific. And they got a kicker in Cam Little where it kind of feels like Dallas, right? If Dallas was a playoff team with a better defense, it's like, well, you get out near half field, pick up a first down or two, you're in field goal range. Kind of feels that same way for Jacksonville a little bit too, which I think is very advantageous come playoff time. But I've got the Jags at 6. They can get to the Super Bowl. They can. I think it's time that we have to sit here and say, you know what, the Jags are a real team. And they've had an opportunity to do this over the course of the past few years and just have come up short, but they made the move. They fired the GM. Remember, they weren't going to fire the GM. And then Cohen was like, well, I don't want the job. And then it's like, well, never mind. We are going to fire the GM. And he's like, well, I'll take the job. And they got some guy that looks like he's my age as the GM. I think the Travis Hunter thing is going to end up kind of blowing up in their face, but they're winning without him, and they look like a really good football team. Jags are for real. And, we'll see how things play out for them. Again, a lot of these teams, particularly in the AFC, it's like, they get the Super Bowl, but they could get blown out in their first playoff game. Like, it's going to be so hard to predict these playoffs, and really from a gambling perspective too as well. 5, Seattle. Last week, I also had them at 5. I'm just a little bit hesitant to really crown them. Lots of people around the nation are ready to say they're the Super Bowl favorite, and I think Vegas has them as the Super Bowl favorite, if I'm not mistaken, as well. McDonald's tremendous. What he has done in 2 years, stud of a hire. John Schneider continues to be an elite GM for the Seattle Seahawks, and if you're ranking like defensive coaches in the NFL, like, he's at the top of the list, really. I mean, he's right there with a couple of other guys there as well, but he's been awesome. That game of Darnold against the Rams kind of lives rent-free in my mind. Recently, they haven't asked him to do too much because their defense is just so good, and it's like, well, we'll just play defense and we'll run the ball, we'll do a little play action, but you're not going to ask you to do a ton. They could be in a spot. I don't know. Right? These defenses for Houston, Seattle are elite, but it feels like could be a spot in the postseason where it's like, all right, Sam, game-winning drive. We need you. What you got? And I just don't really trust them in that spot. So I'm hesitant to put them higher on the list, but they deserve a heck of a lot of credit. McDonald's tremendous. The moves they've made are tremendous. Their defense is elite. It's a great football team, but I got them at 5. In fact, I got 2 of their comrades in the NFC West ahead of them. At 4, I got the Rams. I've had them at 1 for a couple of weeks. You talk about peaking at the right time in the National Football League all the time, and the Rams are not. And I think it's a real thing. Right, you see it for teams kind of going into March Madness in college basketball where it's like, oh, they're a really good team, but they kind of stumbled in the conference tournament, and boom, they're losing in the round of 32, right? I think that kind of works for the NFL too, where it's like the Rams have been awesome for much of the year, and then all of a sudden, oh, they're losing to Seattle, and they go down to Atlanta, they lose that game. All right, what's going on? Granted, on the road, but, I mean, they're firing a special teams guy. There's just some turmoil there, a little bit of turmoil for the Rams. You got the Puka stuff off the field. Maybe that's a bit of a distraction, too. They're a threat, especially when you look at the quarterbacks in the playoffs. It's like, yeah, give me Stafford. I understand he may have just choked away the MVP last night, but Matthew Stafford is still the real deal, and I still believe in him more so than probably any quarterback in the NFC in the playoffs. So they absolutely could win the Super Bowl, but now with them, we talked about this with a few other teams, wouldn't surprise me if they were one and done. Right? There's a world where they got to go to Philadelphia in the first round. We saw that last year, obviously. And they played well, but lost the game. But, like, the Rams were, I think, if you had to pick one team a couple of weeks ago, the public would say, yeah, Rams probably going to win the Super Bowl. Now it's like they're going on the road to Philadelphia in the first round, potentially. Like, they could be one and done. Wouldn't surprise anybody. Also wouldn't surprise anybody if they made a run. Rams at 4. Niners at 3. Look, I've been on the Niners pretty much all year. When Mac was playing, and then Purdy comes back, and then it's like Mac was playing great. Purdy looks like the best quarterback in the league. I know he's not, but it's just the way he's playing the past few games. And I've always been a huge Shanahan guy. I think he's tremendous. People give him, I feel like, not enough credit for making the Super Bowl those 2 times. Ran into a buzzsaw, ran into Mahomes and Reed, lost both of them. But, I mean, imagine if he had just won one of those games. I think people view him at a higher light than what they do. I think Shanahan's tremendous. I would vote for him for Coach of the Year. That's not a popular opinion. I think people would say you're crazy. It's got to be Vrabel or Johnson. But Shanahan, what he's done with all those injuries is insane. And speaking of the injuries, that's why it's like I got him at 3, but I don't know if they can win the Super Bowl. I really don't. Right? I don't know if your defense can be that bad and win the Super Bowl. Purdy's tremendous. That offense is tremendous. They've got the injuries. I believe in Saleh just dialing it up and getting the most out of those guys from an energy and effort perspective, but I just don't know quite if it's enough, especially if Purdy has a game where he throws a couple of picks. He's going to throw some interceptions here in the postseason. He's a gunslinger. That's what happens. I can live with that when that's your play style, but I don't know if it's quite enough to win a Super Bowl. But I've been in on the Niners all year. Shanahan, one of his best coaching jobs this year here in 2025. 2, Houston. Last week they were 3. They beat the Chargers 20-16. They got out to a 14-0 lead and sat on it. You can do that when you have an elite defense, right? Wasn't the most fun watch. I mean, it was fun to see LA kind of get back in the game and have a chance there, but they basically said, we got this lead. We're going to sit on it. Stroud did some really stupid stuff when they had the lead there as well. 2 interceptions that were just horrible. I trust C.J. Stroud. He has won playoff games in each of his first 2 years in the league. I think he's going to win another one, at least another one. This year, the 2 interceptions that he had were just dumb and, out of not, something he typically does, right? Out of character for C.J. Stroud. But, again, looking at these quarterbacks in the AFC, Who do you trust more, Bo Nix or C.J. Stroud? C.J. Stroud, right? Bo Nix, Drake May. That's a question. Answer's probably Drake May. I trust C.J. Stroud in these moments. He's been here before. He's done it, and this defense is absurd, right? I feel like they're kind of flying under the radar. It's like, it's the Texans. No, this defense is unbelievable, and they absolutely could lead this team to a Super Bowl championship. The Texans are contenders to win the whole thing with that defense. They're unreal. New England. Been on them for much of the year as well. Their schedule's been weak. They don't have many signature wins, like the Buffalo game's like their best win. And Buffalo, they got Josh Allen, but they ain't a very good football team. They ain't a great football team, definitely. They beat the crud out of the Jets. Jets are a mess. I would fire Aaron Glenn, right? I mean, sometimes I feel like guys, deserve more than just 1 year. But with him, it's pretty obvious. Like, he's not a head coach. Good coordinator. Not all coordinators are meant to be head coaches. I would move off of Aaron Glenn. I really would. If I'm the New York Jets. But regardless, Patriots, they got a bunch of, guys that have been in different places. Vrabel gets the most out of them. They clearly hit on a quarterback, deserve a heck of a lot of credit for that. And they're a dangerous team. I feel like with the Broncos, they're a little bit a year early, it feels like. Patriots might be a year or two early too, but they can win it right now. They can absolutely win the world championship. Got the Patriots at number 1. All right, couple minutes here. I'm not going to fully dive into this, but do want to mention the game last night, Monday Night Football. Kind of alluded to this in our power ranking segment, but the Rams, it's about peaking at the right time in this league, and they just are not peaking at the right time. And they've dropped a few games here. I get they're on the road, flying across the country, but coach getting fired when they're like the Super Bowl front runners on special teams, and they had a special teams touchdown. I don't know if that correlates there whatsoever, but they were kind of getting manhandled on the offensive line, particularly in the first half. Atlanta is a solid defense, more solid than I think a lot of people give them credit for. Maybe it'll be enough for Morris to hold on to his job. We'll see. But, I mean, they had some injuries there, and they had some really bad penalties, kind of out of character for a Sean McVay team. And it's become evident where, people bang on Jared Goff for being a statue back there, but Matthew Stafford, he's not moving, right? And he had some happy feet at times. I mean, the interceptions, that was kind of Detroit Matthew Stafford. We haven't seen that really in Los Angeles. Just kind of just like, what are you doing? Just kind of reckless and just uncharacteristic throws for Matthew Stafford. They had some opportunities to win. They didn't. But, McVay saying after the game, I think a lot of us were like, yeah, no way. They're started like Devontae, he'll sit. Stafford sit, get Jimmy G in there. But McVay's like, no, we got to play. We're not playing well right now. We're not just going to rest here the final week of the season. They have an opportunity to get right. They're playing the Cardinals. Bengals just played them. Cardinals are horrible. Maybe that can give Matthew Stafford a little bit of life in the MVP. I know the odds right now are like minus 400 in favor of Drake May, which seems a little extreme. I honestly don't know what I would do. Part of me still feels like I'd give it to Stafford, but it's one thing if you lose that game, but if you lose it and you throw several costly interceptions, one of which being a pick six, 2 of them could have been pick sixes, that just doesn't really scream MVP to you. So it'll be interesting to see how the the Rams kind of navigate here into the playoffs. And as I mentioned, there's a world where they go to Philly round 1, right? And this was a team that looked like world beaters. McVay, is this his best group? Stafford, is he going to win the MVP, win a second Super Bowl, and really kind of join the likes of guys like the Mannings and, get into that category with Breeze and maybe even Brady to some extent? I mean, it could be one and done. He could lose the MVP and then be one and done. I still feel okay about the Rams. The momentum thing's real. Peaking at the right time, all that stuff is real. But I don't know. You look at all the quarterbacks in the playoffs, and it's like, yeah, he just played a bad game. But is there really anybody, particularly in the NFC, that you trust more than him? I'm a huge Brock Purdy guy, but do you trust him more than Stafford in the playoffs? Probably not, but that's going to be fascinating to watch how that unfolds here. And we got some big games here this week, and looking forward to talking about them. The AFC North showdown, I mean, that'd be crazy if Baltimore finds a way in. That would be just a collapse, an embarrassing collapse from Pittsburgh, but we'll talk about that game. The Carolina-Tampa Bay game, right? I mean, that division's been bad for what feels like a long time. And, good chance the Bucs are under 500 and in. I kind of feel good about them winning, but then again, I felt good about them getting into the playoffs after they had the start to the year they did. They're spiraling out of control. Baker says he'll get them together and get them playing their best ball here at the end of the year. We will see, but kind of feels like whoever wins that game is just kind of a sacrificial lamb, right? And that, they'll host a playoff game, but do you really think they'll go on a run? I don't know. We'll see. But huge opportunity for Baker, huge opportunity for Bryce Young there as well. We'll save the Marcus Freeman stuff for later in the week. We will preview the games, the college football games tomorrow. That's going to be awesome. Ohio State, Miami tomorrow night. I believe the number is like 10. I think there's a world where this thing could get competitive. If Ohio State gets a big lead early, it's over. But if Miami can hang in there, take that first punch, put together a drive against that elite defense, maybe they have a chance. But I'm just excited for the brands. I've said this. Ohio State, Miami, that's awesome. And looking forward to that. And the games on New Year's Day are insane. The games on New Year's Day are insane. People are banging on the college football playoff, and I would invite everybody. I would urge everybody, tune in on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, because the first round, there's some kinks that still need to get worked out, but these quarterfinal games are unbelievable, and I expect all of them to deliver, to be completely honest with you, and I'm really excited about that. We'll preview them tomorrow on the show, so looking forward to that. Appreciate Jason Williams for stopping by from the Inquirer. Great stuff on the Reds and the Bengals. That interview will be out later today. Of course, you can find our show in podcast form. Do us a favor, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. You're listening on Spotify? Great, subscribe. Apple? Great, subscribe. We appreciate the heck out of it as we try to build those numbers a little bit too. It's not just, obviously the people tapped into what we're doing live and the thousands of people that tap into our videos on YouTube, also building up that podcast platform there as well. So help us out, subscribe to the pod. And also some clips from Off the Bench, really good Off the Bench today with Reader, and that New Year's resolution segment, that Chase Brown segment. Those will be out on YouTube at some point this week there as well. But appreciate everyone as always. We do have a show tomorrow, and we will be back here live at the channel with Off the Bench at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And until then, take care, everybody.